The desert wind moaned through. The Apache pass like a warning meant, for any man foolish enough to ride alone at dusk. Ethan Cole guided his horse carefully between jagged rocks, his eyes scanning the land with the instinct of someone who had survived too many close calls in the wild. West, the sky was burning red as the sun dipped low, and that color put a knot in his stomach. Blood-red sunsets always did. This land had a way of killing men who ignored signs. That was when he saw her. A young Apache girl hung from the thick branch of a gnarled oak tree, a rough rope wrapped tight around her neck. Her wrists were bound behind her back, and her boots barely touched the ground. She kicked weakly, gasping, her breath coming in broken sounds. The sight froze Ethan in his tracks. Apaches didn't leave their own to die like that. Every story he'd ever heard said so. His hand drifted toward his rifle, then stopped. Shooting the rope might snap her neck. There was only one choice. "Damn it!" he muttered, swinging down from his saddle. Every step toward the tree felt wrong. The land was too quiet, the air too still, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Still, Ethan didn't slow. He reached the girl, felt the rope cutting into her skin, and pulled out his knife. Her eyes fluttered open, dark and sharp, locking onto his face. For a brief moment, something flickered in them. Fear, relief, or something else entirely. He didn't stop to wonder. One hard slash and the rope snapped. She collapsed into his arms, coughing and choking as he lowered her to the ground. Ethan loosened the bindings on her wrists and pressed his canteen to her lips. She drank just enough to breathe again. Her body felt tense, not broken like he expected. Strong, too. Strong for someone who had been hanging. Moments from death. "You're safe now," he said quietly. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. Then a sharp whistle sliced through the silence. Ethan's blood ran cold. From behind rocks and trees, shapes moved, silent, deadly. Apache warriors stepped into view, rifles leveled, arrows drawn. A circle closed around him in seconds. The girl he had just saved pulled away and stood on her own feet, steady as stone. No weakness, no fear. Her gaze met his, and for the first time, he understood. The rope, the struggle, the hanging. It had all been meant for him. Ethan slowly raised his hands as the truth settled in his chest like lead. He had ridden into the desert believing he was saving a life. Instead, he had walked straight into a trap. And the wild. West had just shown him how mercy could be the most dangerous mistake of all. Ethan stood motionless as the Apache warriors closed the circle around him, the barrels of their rifles steady, their eyes cold and unreadable. The desert that had moments ago felt empty now seemed crowded with danger. The girl he had saved stepped away from him, her breathing calm, her posture proud. There was no sign of the helpless victim he had risked his life for. Dust clung to her dress, but her gaze was sharp, calculating. "You should have kept riding, Cowboy," she said in clear, unbroken English. Ethan exhaled slowly, anger and disbelief tightening his chest. So it was all an act. She did not deny it. "The rope was real," she replied. "If no one came, I would have died. But if a white man stopped, we would learn what kind of man he was." Before Ethan could answer, an older Apache stepped forward. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined like carved stone. Authority followed him like a shadow. The warriors lowered their weapons slightly, but not enough for comfort. This was their leader. The girl bowed her head respectfully. "My daughter, Ayanna," the chief said, his voice low and heavy. "She was brave to stand as bait." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Bait for what?" "I'm no soldier." The chief's eyes narrowed. "Soldiers burned our village, shot our children, hung our men from trees just like that one." His finger pointed back toward the oak. "We no longer trust the difference." Ethan was tied with rawhide straps and forced to walk as the tribe moved deeper into the canyon. The sun sank, and the cold crept in fast. More than once he stumbled on the rocky path, and once a young Apache boy nearly fell into a ravine. Without thinking, Ethan lunged forward, steadying the child before he could tumble. The warriors noticed. So did Ayanna. That night, fires flickered low in the Apache camp. Voices argued in sharp whispers. Some demanded Ethan's death before sunrise. Others wanted him traded or left for the desert. Ayanna listened, silent, her eyes never leaving him. "They judge all white men by one crime," Ethan said quietly when she brought him water. "And they'll keep bleeding for it." She hesitated. You cut the rope, she said. You could have ridden away. Before he could reply, a distant thunder rolled across the desert. Not a storm, hoofbeats. Then came the faint metallic clink of rifles. U.S. cavalry. Ayana's face drained of color. If the soldiers found the camp, there would be no mercy, no questions. She looked at Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. Your presence has brought death to my people, she said. Ethan met her gaze, steady despite the ropes biting into his wrists. Or maybe, he said, I'm the only thing standing between them and it. The first gunshot shattered the dawn, echoing off the canyon walls like a death cry. Horses screamed and flames leapt as bullets tore through the Apache camp. Soldiers poured in from the ridge, their blue coats flashing between clouds of dust and smoke. Panic spread fast, but it did not break the tribe. Warriors grabbed rifles and bows, women pulled children toward the rocks, and the air filled with chaos and fire. In the confusion, Ayana reached Ethan. Her knife flashed, slicing through the rawhide ropes binding his wrists. She shoved a rifle into his hands, her eyes fierce and urgent. Go, she said. You owe us nothing. Ethan tightened his grip on the weapon, pain burning in his shoulder as he moved. I'm not leaving, he replied. Not like this. He fired alongside the Apache warriors, covering their retreat as the cavalry pushed forward. Bullets tore through tents and kicked up dust at their feet. Ethan dropped one soldier, then another, each shot heavy on his conscience but necessary. He took a round to the shoulder and nearly fell, but he forced himself upright, using the rocks for cover. Blood soaked his sleeve, yet he kept fighting. Through the smoke, he saw Chief Red Hawk stumble, wounded and surrounded. Without thinking, Ethan ran. A bullet grazed his ribs as he reached the chief, hauling the older man behind a fallen horse. Together, they returned fire, holding the line long enough for the tribe to escape into the narrow pass, where the cavalry horses could not follow. The soldiers, believing they had ridden into a far larger force, finally pulled back. Their bugle call faded, leaving only smoke, moans of the wounded, and the crackle of dying fires. When the fighting ended, Ethan collapsed to his knees. His vision blurred and the desert spun. Ayana knelt beside him, pressing her hands against his wounds. Tears streaked her dust-covered face. Why? She asked. We tried to kill you. Ethan managed a weak smile. Seemed wrong to let you die for someone else's hatred. Chief Red Hawk approached slowly, leaning on a spear. He studied Ethan for a long moment, then placed his hand over Ethan's heart. You walked into a trap, he said, and chose honor over fear. From this day, you are not our enemy. Days later, healed enough to ride, Ethan prepared to leave. The Apache camp stood hidden and safe among the mountains. Ayana watched from a ridge as he mounted his horse. There were no promises, no farewell words heavy with sorrow, only a shared understanding. Ethan rode back into the Wild West a changed man. To others, he would always be just another cowboy. But among the Apaches, his name would be remembered as the man who became family by blood and fire, and who proved that even in a land ruled by violence, mercy could still carve its own legend.